Hello and welcome to this edition of Fulton Justice. I'm your host, Yolanda Lewis, District Court Administrator for the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. This program is dedicated to providing you with resources, information, and a closer look at how our justice system works for you. Today, we will begin a two-part series on the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force. Part 1 of this series will focus on the purpose of the task force and how the body's recommendations were applied once the committee's work concluded. With the largest court system in Georgia, Fulton County has a daunting task of meeting court user needs in an accessible, efficient, and fair manner. But like most trial courts throughout the state and the nation, Fulton County courts struggle to deliver optimal services under tightening budget constraints. Realizing the need for technological innovation and more efficient processes and systems, Fulton County Superior Court Chief Judge Cynthia Wright and State Court Chief Judge at the time, Patsy Porter, agreed to chart a new path for our courts. In November 2011, the judges and court administrators gathered a group of knowledgeable, trusted stakeholders to form the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force. The task force's primary goal was to anticipate demand on the judicial system and recommend how best to prepare for those demands with respect to court organization, jurisdiction, and operations. Stay with us as we start our discussion with stakeholders of the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Fulton Justice. Joining us now is Chief Judge Cynthia D. Wright of the Superior Court of Fulton County and the Atlanta Judicial Circuit. She's also the founding member of the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force. Welcome, Judge Wright.
Thank you very much.
So it has been an amazing year for Fulton County. Tell us a little bit about the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force and all of your work.
What an incredible journey we've been on, and we've been on this journey together with so many different partners as we examine the court, the structure of the court, things that were holding us back from improving our business practices. And we had the involvement of the community, the bar associations, the Atlanta Bar, the Georgia Bar. We had attorneys that participated in the task force. We had community leaders. And we had, most notably, we had 3 Fulton County commissioners and 2 legislators. And it was important to have the commissioners on board because they had to experience some of the obstacles that we were experiencing toward achieving operational efficiencies. So in part, it was an educational, a journey in education of the problems that we were having to achieve operational efficiencies in our court system.
And I remember when we first sat down and you start talking about this task force that you wanted to put together, and I remember you had this grand vision. So has the vision come to fruition?
I think so. We probably didn't accomplish everything I would like to see accomplished, but as I say, I'm a change agent by avalanche, but I realize that it comes only incrementally. But what the task force was able to accomplish primarily was to specifically identify rules and regulations that either the board had or the personnel board had, or laws that needed to be changed, so that once we completed this process of identification, then the legislature took it one step forward and they built the foundation so that we can build upon that change.
I want to talk about the legislation soon, but tell me a little bit about how you went about, and Judge Porter, Patsy Porter, who was the chief judge at that time, of course, also worked with you. How did you go about selecting the members and the people who would be instrumental in this change?
Well, Judge Porter and I sat down one day and we talked about how many judges should participate on the task force. I had initially thought we'd probably have 3 from each court. She said, well, we represent our courts. Why don't we just singularly participate, because we don't want the task force to get too big, and we knew that we needed Board of Commissioners involvement, and we knew that we needed legislative involvement, and we knew that we needed kind of end user involvement, which would have been the communities and the Bar Association representatives and the attorney representatives. So we did it quite democratically. I selected one legislator, she selected the other. We both agreed on Mr. William Barwick and the then Atlanta Bar President, Rita Sheffey. And I selected one attorney, she selected another attorney. We agreed on the Board of Commissioners that should be involved, and I think we agreed on everybody else that participate on the task force.
So how important was it, because this task force included community stakeholders, folks that are in tune with what the community needs and wants from our courts. How important was that aspect?
I think it was very important, because after all, what the courts are, what law really is, to me, it tells us how to live in right relationship with each other. And so to have the community involvement and to have their perspective and their active participation, and it was very active participation, we could reflect back to them the work we do, and they could reflect back to us how they think that we could do our work better. So it was, I thought, very important to have that sort of give and take.
Customer service was the topic of every conversation at the task force meetings. Talk about how important customer service is to the grand vision for our courts.
Well, the judges are elected by the people, and we are it's the people's court. So when they don't receive good service, we're not doing the work that they elected us to do. And I feel very strongly that the electors of this county, the people of this county, ought to have friendly service, they ought to have informed service, and more importantly, they should have an ability to look at the work of the court, to look at the work of each individual judge, to provide for transparency and accountability in our work. If we don't have the confidence of the public, then we don't have what we need to do to dispense justice.
Right. What an amazing legislative year this has been. And I know a lot of the legislation from Fulton County really derived from recommendations from this task force. Talk about the legislative year and how that has really impacted what you've done with the task force.
Well, Chairman Willard was a member of our task force, and of course he is also the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. And he, together with other members of the Fulton County delegation, carried the bills that we needed to give us the tools so that we can implement the recommendations of the task force. For example, although the Board of Commissioners had given us the ability to go to an unclassified service based on a task force recommendation, because they gave us that ability, we thought, well, they could also not give us that ability in the future. So we passed legislation saying all future hires and promotions will be unclassified. It will be us to exercise that power responsibly. It will be up to us to provide for good management. But in my opinion, it creates a performance-driven workforce, which will enable us to create more customer satisfaction. The other thing it did is to give us a greater budget independence. I think for years there has been an issue with us being able to fill the positions when we need to fill them, and those positions that we need to fill. And so the personnel regs, coupled with finance department regulations and their operations, sometimes slowed down the progress of the court. And I think those were two of the very most critical parts of the legislative package that passed. I also think one of the greatest legislative bills that was passed provides for a chief elected magistrate. And the reason why I think that is important is because for years we have had the only county in the state that had an appointed magistrate, and it was appointed by the state court. And this, I think, provides for greater transparency and greater electoral accountability. And I think that's very important because it is the magistrate judges that do the first appearance at the jail. They hear a case the first time, a criminal case, and they are also the ones where they handle small claims cases. So they are the court where the public has the greatest chance of interaction with the courts.
So one of the things I want to ask you now, I know you've created the internal governance committee, which is composed of state court and superior court judges. Where do we go from here?
Well, we are moving forward. We will soon have a joint jury. We've now hired our joint jury clerk. We are proceeding with a uniform e-filing system, which we hope we'll have in place by January 2014. And at some point, I hope that we will have a consolidated administrative structure to serve both courts. And who knows where we will get to. Just by talking to each other, it's amazing the strides that we've made.
Yeah, and one of the other things, you're also working, of course, we have the consolidation of jury, but you're also working on a host of other projects and talking about the court reporters as well as the customer service, the signage in the building.
Correct.
How important is that to really showing the public that we're actually moving forward with these recommendations?
I think that those are the things that the public will probably most see, that they will be what the public most connects with. It is the internal cooperation, though, that will actually save us money and provide, I think, for a more seamless, a more transparent court system.
Wonderful. This has been a great opportunity to speak with you today. We've done a lot of work in the courts, and I know you're tired. You should be tired from all of the great strides that you've made. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Up next, we'll be joined by Rita Sheffey, partner at Hutton and Williams, and also the vice chair of the task force. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Our next guest, Ms. Rita Sheffey, is a partner at Hutton Williams LLP, immediate past president of the Atlanta Bar Association, and served as vice chair of the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force. Ms. Sheffey, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Well, we've had a great year, and we've had an opportunity to talk to Judge Wright about the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force. But before we talk about that, tell me a little bit about how long you've been practicing and any specializations you've practiced in.
Sure. Well, as of this Labor Day, I have been a practicing lawyer for 26 years.
Wow.
All of it with the same law firm, Hutton and Williams. And my primary area of practice is trial law, so I'm a litigator, and I try cases and I help clients resolve disputes.
Now, I recently attended an Atlanta Bar Association luncheon, and you got a host of awards, which were very well deserved. Tell me a little bit about your work with the Atlanta Bar Association.
Well, I've had a number of roles with the Atlanta Bar, and I've enjoyed all of it. Clearly, the most significant role I had was serving as the 104th president of the Atlanta Bar from June of 2011 until May of 2012. And then during this past year, I was immediate past president, and I chaired several committees, including our Reputation and Public Trust Committee, which is, I think, very important to the Bar Association, as well as two search committees to find new employees to succeed two longtime employees who had retired, including our executive director.
Right.
And so then most recently I worked with the new director to help have a smooth and seamless transition.
Congratulations on your awards.
Thank you so much.
Now let's talk a little bit about your work with the task force. You really was the vice chair, and so you were one of the people who kept to move this process along. Tell me a little bit about your role.
Well, I really enjoyed it, and I was honored that Chief Judge Wright and Chief Judge Porter asked me to serve in that role. And my role really was to actively participate in not only the task force meetings, but in almost all of the committee meetings that we had, and to help keep the process moving forward. And I also felt like, as a representative of one of the bar associations, that I had a special responsibility to keep not only our members informed about the work of the task force, but also to keep other representatives of other bar associations informed, so that we made sure that everyone in the legal community had a sense of what we were doing.
And we know that there were community partners as well as partners from the courts, but how important was it to have someone like yourself, a practicing attorney, as part of this group?
Well, I think it was very important to have lawyers involved, and we did involve lawyers in two respects. One, we had, I believe, 5 practicing lawyers who actually served on the task force, including myself, and we reached out to our separate constituencies, if you will, and we also did an online questionnaire, I'm sure you'll recall, of the broader Metro Atlanta legal community. And I think what was most important about having the lawyers involved is clearly lawyers are among the key stakeholders in dealing with the courts, and we had a very good diversity not only of participants on the task force, but also in the respondents to the questionnaire. So we had lawyers who try cases in the Fulton County courts. We had lawyers like myself who also try cases in federal courts and in other state courts. So as we moved through this process and we were assessing what are best practices and how are ways that we can work to enhance and improve the delivery of court services, all of that was beneficial to us.
And I know that we're still implementing some of the recommendations, but what has the response been from the legal community so far?
Well, I think it's been very positive. I think everyone who practices in the courts and works with the courts, we're very excited about the potential for improving efficiency, increasing transparency and accountability, and just generally providing better customer service. I will say that some lawyers, I think, are a little bit skeptical, and I would say that in a healthy way, because, as you know, there have been some prior efforts to study the courts and to make recommendations, and some of those resulted in some limited success. And we were very committed that we wanted to make sure that this task force had the real capacity to set something in motion that would lead to meaningful change.
And so now that we've concluded the work of the task force, the initial work of the task force, are you still involved with monitoring what's happening in the courts?
I really am not directly involved in monitoring. The way the task force was set up, we had no authority to implement these changes. We simply were involved in helping the court discuss and talk about what some appropriate recommendations would be. But I can tell you that I'm a very interested bystander and observer, and I frequently touch base with Chief Judge Wright to find out how the work is going, and I'm very interested in how this all evolves.
Out of the recommendations that came from the task force, what recommendations do you think are most important?
Well, I think they're all important, and I think they're complementary, but without doubt, in my mind, the most important one was the establishment of the joint governance structure between the judges on the two courts, because it seems to me that setting that and set framework in place where they talk about and collaborate and work to improve the overall system, that's really key to the success in the future, because the more that they have conversations, then the more likely they are to be able to identify areas that they can improve. And it also demonstrates their commitment to transparency and accountability, and I guess the ultimate goal, which is excellent customer service.
And I want to talk about customer service. Judge Wright and I talked about this, but how important is customer service to instilling public trust and confidence to in the people who actually use the system?
Oh, it's absolutely vital, because many of us have heard the complaints where someone came down for jury service and they had to wait, or they didn't understand what was going on and they weren't kept informed. And I think that when people get to the courthouse, and to be able to easily find where you're going and how to get there, and that to be efficient in the court operations, that's what people see. That's the first line. And in order for those folks and all of us to be able to go to the polls and to make informed decisions about the judges on the court, I think they need to be well informed. And I think all of these recommendations that the court's considering will help move us in that direction.
You've seen the legislative year that we've had this year. Everybody's talking about it. Tell me, how did you take all of that in, knowing that a lot of the legislation really started from the task force recommendations.
Well, it was wonderful to know that we had some small part in leading to that kind of change. And I can't say enough about the Fulton County Commissioners who participated on the task force, as well as Chairman Wendell Willard, because they're the ones who took the next active steps to be able to make these recommendations move a lot closer to reality. And so I think that was incredibly impressive, and I'm so proud to have been associated with them in the process.
Final thoughts about the work of the task force and where we go from here?
Well, I guess I'm just excited and optimistic about the future. I don't think that it's ever looked brighter for the Fulton County courts. Right now, it's all really in the hands of the judges and the court administrative personnel, such as yourself. But I hope that all of you know that the rest of us who participated were ready, willing, and able to step in if you ever need anything else from us.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your work on the task force. It was an amazing opportunity to work with you.
Thanks so much. I enjoyed working with you as well.
Up next, we'll share our final thoughts on the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force. Stay tuned. Today, we welcome two members of the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force to talk about their work and commitment to improving our court system. Re-engineering a court system involves evaluating and adjusting any number of court operations, from the structure of the court itself to operational requirements to the use of technology. There are no easy choices when it comes to re-engineering. Even in states conducive to such changes, it has not been an easy job to carry out major operational reforms. However, the task force's main objective to improve business practices, eliminate systematic inefficiencies, and identify duplication of services within the state, superior, and magistrate courts are off to a remarkable start. The recommendations compiled and endorsed by the stakeholders remain a great effort to increase public trust and confidence in our courts through transparency, advancing public safety, and ensuring access to justice, all while maintaining fiscal responsibility. Special thanks to both of our guests today. And if you would like more information on today's topic, please contact my office at 404-612-4518 or visit our website at fultoncourt.org. Join us next time for Fulton Justice as we continue part 2 of this series on the Fulton County Court Improvement Task Force. Thank you for joining us today. I'll see you next time.